Here's a question that makes a lot of believers uncomfortable. The Tower of Babel may not be about a tower at all. Most people remember this story as humanity trying to build a skyscraper to heaven, God becoming angry and then suddenly creating different languages. It sounds simple, until you notice one detail. Be honest, if people were actually building a tower to reach heaven, would that make sense to you? Even in ancient times, would anyone really believe they could climb into God's dwelling with bricks and mortar? Think about that for a second. The entire story of Babel appears in 9 verses in Genesis chapter 11. 9 verses. Yet it supposedly explains why the world speaks thousands of different languages. And that's where things get interesting. The story begins by saying, the whole earth had one language and the same words. Then people traveled east and settled in the land of Shinar, a region usually associated with ancient Mesopotamia near modern-day Iraq. Then they said something unusual. Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. That sounds like a small detail, but it's not. The text specifically mentions baked bricks and bitumen, a type of asphalt. Why mention construction materials at all? Because these details match what archaeologists know about Mesopotamian cities. In that region, stone was scarce, so people often built massive stepped temples called ziggurats using baked bricks and bitumen. And this is where the story changes. A ziggurat was not simply a tall building. It was considered a sacred mountain. Ancient people believed these structures connected heaven and earth. Priests performed rituals there. Offerings were made there. Some ancient inscriptions even describe these temples as places where gods descended. That raises a question. Was Babel really about humans trying to climb up to God? Or was it about creating a place where heaven and earth would meet on human terms? Most churches traditionally teach that Babel was a story of pride. Humanity wanted to become equal with God, so God scattered them. That interpretation has existed for centuries. But then another detail appears. The builders say, "Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Notice something. Their biggest concern is not reaching heaven. Their biggest concern is being scattered. That single detail raises a bigger question. Why were they so afraid of spreading out? Because earlier in Genesis, humanity had been given a different instruction. According to Genesis chapter 9, after the flood, Noah's descendants were expected to spread across the earth and fill it. But the people of Babel wanted the opposite. They wanted to stay together. They wanted one center, one city, one identity, one name, and one language. That sounds straightforward, until you notice another detail. God says, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do." For many readers, that statement sounds surprising. God does not say their tower is impossible. He does not say their engineering is foolish. He says their unity gives them extraordinary potential. Some people even find that verse unsettling. After all, isn't unity usually considered a good thing? Why would God disrupt it? And this is where interpretations begin to diverge. One interpretation says the issue was pride. Human beings were trying to build civilization without God, establishing security and identity apart from divine guidance. According to this reading, the tower becomes a symbol of human self-sufficiency. Another interpretation suggests something slightly different. Some scholars point out that concentrated human power often leads to oppression. Earlier in Genesis, readers encounter figures who use strength and influence for violence and domination. Could Babel represent humanity gathering power into one place before corruption had a chance to spread? In that reading, scattering the nations becomes less of a punishment and more of a limitation placed on human ambition. But that's not the strange part. The story introduces another character connected to Babel, and many people overlook him completely.
His name is Nimrod. Genesis chapter 10 describes Nimrod as a mighty hunter and an early ruler. Then it says, the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. The text never directly says Nimrod built the tower. Read it carefully, it doesn't. Yet in later traditions, Nimrod often becomes the central figure of the story. Some ancient Jewish writings portray Nimrod as a powerful king who encouraged rebellion against God. Some later traditions even present him as the mindset behind the tower. But Genesis itself leaves the connection almost mysterious, and that mystery creates tension. Was Nimrod actually involved, or did later generations simply associate Babel with him because his kingdom began there? Nobody can answer with certainty. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating. Ancient Mesopotamia really did have enormous temple towers. One famous example was in Babylon. Centuries after Genesis, Babylon became one of the most influential cities in the ancient world. Greek historians described impressive structures there. Ancient inscriptions mention temple towers reaching extraordinary heights. One structure, called Etemenaki, has been translated by some scholars as something like House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. Think about those words. Heaven and earth, a place connecting the divine and the human. Suddenly, the Babel story sounds much less like a fairy tale about people stacking bricks into the sky. Instead, it sounds like a story deeply rooted in the religious world of ancient Mesopotamia. But then another question appears. If Babel reflects Babylonian temple culture, when was the Genesis account written? Some scholars suggest the story may have taken on special meaning during or after the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC, when many Judeans lived under Babylonian rule. Imagine being in exile surrounded by magnificent temples and towering structures that symbolized imperial power. A story about God scattering human pride would suddenly carry enormous significance. Another perspective suggests the account preserves much older traditions passed down long before the exile. Again, there is debate, and that's part of what makes Babel so intriguing. Then something unexpected happens. People often assume the creation of different languages is the main punishment, but the text itself emphasizes scattering just as much as language confusion. The city project stops, the people disperse, the centralized culture breaks apart, humanity becomes many nations. And here's something else that often gets overlooked. Later in the Bible, diversity of nations is not always portrayed negatively. The prophets frequently envision different peoples and languages coming together in worship. The book of Revelation describes people from every tribe, language, and nation. Then readers notice another connection. In Acts chapter 2 during Pentecost, people from different nations hear the message in their own languages. Some Christians see this as a kind of reversal of Babel, not because everyone returns to one language, but because people understand one another despite their differences. That interpretation is beautiful. Yet another reading suggests Pentecost is not undoing Babel at all. Perhaps Babel's diversity was never the problem. Maybe the real issue was humanity's attempt to create unity through centralized power and self-made identity. In that case, Pentecost does not erase diversity, it honors it. Different languages remain, understanding increases, and that possibility changes the entire story. Because suddenly the Tower of Babel may not be primarily about languages, it may not even be primarily about a tower. It may be about power, identity, human ambition, the desire to control our own destiny. Or perhaps it is about something even deeper. The builders said, "Let us make a name for ourselves." Yet throughout the Bible, God repeatedly promises to make a name for people according to His purposes. Abraham receives such a promise only one chapter later. Did Babel fail because humanity wanted greatness, or did it fail because they wanted to define greatness entirely on their own terms? And that leaves us with the same mystery readers have wrestled with for centuries. Was the Tower of Babel a story of pride, a warning about centralized power, a memory inspired by ancient temple culture, or a lesson that unity itself can become dangerous when it is built around human ambition instead of divine purpose? Maybe the real question isn't why the tower fell. Maybe it's why humanity keeps trying to build Babel in different forms, generation after generation. So which interpretation makes more sense to you?